The AP has just broken some new news. This has just come out from the Associated Press. This is incredible. Trump administration officials have been sending babies and other young children. Oh, hold on. To at least 3. Can we put up the graphic of this? Thank you. Do we have it? No. 3 tender age shelters in South Texas. Lawyers and medical providers. Just, I think I'm going to have to hand this off. Yeah. Sorry. That does it for us tonight. We'll see you again tomorrow. Now it is time for The Last Word with Lawrence O'Donnell, where he is live in Brownsville, Texas.
Travis Wayne Goodsell with my video for Mother's Day about the mother of the man like Moses for the Mormon Church. I decided to just do a video revealing some Paleo-Hebrew decipherment for you, as I am the guy who has deciphered Paleo-Hebrew. So there it is. The man like Moses is to restore the kingdom of David. David, 18th dynasty, David-Moses dynasty, with the founder being Yah Moses. And Yah being the moon god, which is symbolized with the Egyptian god Thoth, or Thot, which goes back to the origin of Egyptian. So the origin of the religion is Thot, and thus the 18th dynasty was a restoration of the origin of King David anyway. Even though the first king was Osiris. So Thot has to do with Osiris in that concept. And then Horus, the son of Osiris, is the personification of both the sun and the moon, government and religion, the eyes of Horus, the sun and the moon, government and religion. And so with King David, the Jews are digging up all of Jerusalem, desperately trying to find anything that will tie the land to King David. And the closest they can come is at least 100 so years later. They can get to the kings that Assyria came in and conquered, both in northern and southern Israel, Judah and northern Israel. But that's as far back as they can go. So the origin of King David just is gone from the archaeological record. And so they employ the fallacious archaeological theory, and because it's fallacious, they need to drop it and look for some other explanation as to Jewish origin, but they refuse to, so they keep digging, because they're certain that one day they'll find something. And there have been plenty of scams that have come out to try to establish what isn't supposed to be established, because they need to dismiss the theory. And so Jerusalem is not the intended capital of the Jews. During Babylonian time, yes, there were Jews with a king on Jerusalem. But before that, there was no King David in Jerusalem as the capital of Israel. Israel was never an independent nation. It was always a tributary nation. And even then, it was divided prior to the kingdom of Judah and the kingdom of northern Israel. It was divided into sub-tributary kingdoms. And that's what people don't fully understand, is what a tributary kingdom is. To give tribute, obviously, is to pay homage to someone of higher ranking. And that's how it was. Is originally the land of Canaan, the land of Israel, whatever you want to call it, was under the control of Egypt. And so Pharaoh was the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords, the great high priest, Melchizedek. And so the story about Abraham rescuing his brother Lot, conquering the king who had held him captive, and then Abraham paid tithes, incorrect word, it's supposed to be tribute, to Melchizedek. He didn't pay tithes. And the only person that could be, whether the author of the text knew it or not, is that Melchizedek was the Pharaoh of Egypt. It's not complicated. Egypt owned Canaan. The author of the text placed Abraham in Canaan. And so whether he realized it or not, that's who Melchizedek is. That was the Pharaoh at whatever time period the author was placing Abraham in. Because it was before Assyria. It was before Babylon. And so it's not them when they conquered the area and made Israel tributary to them. So Israel was never an independent nation. And so I don't understand why the Jews keep pushing to find King David, because even if they did, King David would be a tributary king. He would not be an independent nation king. And so you'd think they'd want to go into Egypt to say, hey, David was the 18th dynasty pharaohs. That's who we come from. Yeah. And so it's the whole land. And yet the Jews, with the Genesis prophecy that the whole land from the Euphrates to the great river, which is supposed to be the Nile, but they say, oh, it's a wadi that is between Israel and Egypt. No, guys. No. Don't diminish your kingdom. It's all of Egypt, which covers Egypt, Ethiopia, and up to the Euphrates through all Israel. That's your territory. And so, yes, Arabs are going to be furious, but Arabs, after all these millennia, are your brothers. We're all one big human family. And so, yes, it's futile to try to reclaim land after all this time being away. So that creates another issue. And so that's who David is. Whether the biblical author obviously didn't know it, or he didn't want to know it. And so then who is Solomon? Now, we understand from Christians and their interpretation of the gospel stories, which I've told you are also prophecies of the latter-day man like Moses of the Mormons. The authors of those texts refer to Jesus as the descendant of David, the very same David. And John the Revelator, and it tells us that Matthew tells us that Jesus was to come out of Egypt. And so the biblical author of Matthew had to write a narrative in which he was actually born in Jerusalem or in Israel, but then had to go to Egypt so that it can be fulfilled that he came out of Egypt. No, he's born in Egypt. But it's a symbol because it's written in the time of having coming out of Egypt in the first place, where the prophecy originated from. And so the prophet is prophesying from Egypt as an Egyptian, saying, hey, he's going to be an Egyptian come out of Egypt, which it's not Egypt in the latter days. And that's why it's a prophecy. And I've already told you that it's America, not Egypt. As the sun and the moon eclipses refer to the collapse of government and religion, Eyes of Horus. Thus the need to restore the kingdom of David by this son of David, as Jesus is called, because the story of Jesus are actually prophecies for this man like Moses of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, even though they will never admit it. Because it means they're in apostasy. So who then is Solomon? Son of David. Exactly. Jesus in symbol, or the man like Moses. That's Solomon. Now what does Solomon mean? Solomon has Salem in it. Jerusalem. Salem is the Hebrew word for peace. And so Salam is used in both Arabic and in Hebrew with different vowel pronunciations to distinguish. Prince Salman, for example, in Saudi Arabia, he's Solomon. That's what it means. That's his name. It's just pronounced differently for Saudi Arabia in the modern vernacular. And so when you see that Solomon has the name Peace, which is the name in Jerusalem, and he's attributed to being the king of Jerusalem, restoring the kingdom of his father David, you now see that the stories of King David and Solomon are all prophecies, apocalyptic literature even, rather than historical documents. The N at the end, that's where my Paleo-Hebrew decipherment comes in, as the N is a determinative to identify people as kings. Solomon, king of Salem, or kingdom, Jershon, Babylon, On, referring to kingdom of whatever precedes it as the word. And so Solomon as the king, it's actually redundant to say King Solomon. You're actually supposed to say King Salem. And Salem, of course, means peace. So then refer to the Isaiah prophecy. Unto us a child is born. Now listen again to Isaiah chapter 9, verse 6, about this child who is to be born, which Christians assume that it's Jesus, according to the Matthew author. For unto us a child is born, a child. A son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulders. He's the heir to the throne of his father, who is the king. That's how the government shall be upon his shoulders. That's what it means. And we get that confirmation. And his name shall be called Wonderful, Counselor, the Mighty God. A man is a god? Yeah. That's what was understood anciently. The Everlasting Father. Similar to Father of the Nation. That kind of concept. The Prince. Princes are those who are heirs to the throne of the king. There's your confirmation. The Prince of Salem. Peace. So now do you get it? It has nothing to do with Jerusalem as the place. That was Constantine who pulled that stunt in designating the land of Israel as the biblical backdrop. And so two possibilities. The Gospels were either written after Constantine designated it as such, or if they can be confirmed as having been written before Constantine, then it was written in the context of Jewish revolts. The Jews looking for a Messiah and bringing up the prophecies in their writings to try to explain the need for this Messiah who is to restore the kingdom of David, but understanding that they lost. And they lost major. So they're trying to say a prophecy that there will come a time in the future that all this will come to pass. And these are the prophecies. So Matthew, therefore, is saying these are the prophecies that must be fulfilled in a future time. If that's before Constantine. If it's after Constantine, then we can just say, oh yeah, it's because Constantine went and designated all the land and the tomb and the Golgotha and all that. So it's an anachronism. But we can probably be fairly certain that the documents date before Constantine, such that it was Jewish literature of apocalyptic nature, similar to John. And John goes so far as to say that there will be a sign in the heaven, which means he's giving us a precise date in the future for when all this is to happen. So there you go. Prince of Peace, Prince of Salem, the son of David, to restore the kingdom of David. Because what happened to David that caused him to lose it? Having a son. According to the story, that whole Bathsheba thing. The house of Sheba, the queen of Sheba. So, yeah. And so, I won't go any further detail on any of that. So, just that's a little interesting Paleo-Hebrew decipherment for you, and how to correctly understand your Bible and your Book of Mormon